Hello, hello, hello. How is everyone? Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Alicia Johnson, and welcome to my YouTube channel. This channel is dedicated to helping everyone who chooses to learn how to recalibrate their lives 12 hours for God and 12 hours for man. And we are doing that and performing that process through a myriad of ways. And one of the ways that we're working through that process now is through journaling. We are currently journaling for forgiveness. We are now at day 27, but if this is your first time joining us, no worries. All of the recordings are there, so you can feel free to catch up at your leisure. But to keep up and to keep track of everything that we're doing here, please like and subscribe so that we can continue to bring you good and valuable content. All right, so let's go ahead with day 27. Today we are discussing forgiving God. Assignment: reread your dedication so that you will remain pinpoint accurate in your journaling focus. How many times have you blamed God for certain situations in your life and in the world when you only know part of the scenario? Why? Knowing and accepting the fact that we only know in part will free you to release yourself from filling in the blanks with erroneous information. Benefit: letting God off the hook because you don't understand frees you to just allow God to be God without your opinion. You either believe God is sovereign or you don't. Day 27: forgiving God. All right, so today was a heavy one when God required me to go through this work the first time. And one of the things that heaven had to show me was that I had a lot of resentment and a lot of anger towards God. And we're taught that we should never get upset with God. We should, because God can take your life. You don't get angry with God. It's just people just chalk things up to this is just one of the mysteries. This is just something that you won't understand until you get to the other side or in the sweet by and by, whatever people say. That sounds good. That sounds, really um helpful. It sounds very loving, but when you have a lot of things in your life that you feel are not happening and you feel that people or other people are moving ahead and you feel that maybe somehow you're cursed, it's like, why me, God? Why are you doing this to me? Why are you treating me like this? Why are you, whatever the case may be, why was I born this in this family? Why was I not born with a silver spoon in my mouth? Why was I born this or whatever? And we may have a lot of doubts. We may have a lot of insecurities. We may just have a lot of disgruntled thoughts and opinions about heaven. And when God began to deal with me, God was like, you've got to find forgiveness in your heart for the things that you thought did not happen for you. And you've got to make peace with the fact that God is God, whether you like it or not. And so, in coming to terms with the fact and in being willing to listen and being willing to be malleable in the hands of God, that's when the revelation started to come. When God began to really like open up various scenarios for me, when God began to really open up and show me why things worked out based on different reasons as to the work that I have to do. When God began to help me to see things in light of the truth of who heaven had created me to be, I began to realize God made absolutely no mistakes. There were no mistakes along the process. God did not make the mistake. I made the mistake. God did not make a misstep. I made the misstep. But even in my disobedience, even in my missteps, God still mixes all of this stuff together for my good and for your good too. So, what areas of your life are you angry with God for, or angry with the outcome or the lack thereof? Because you can only see in part. God began to show me how arrogant I was becoming and how arrogant I was being by assuming that because of the little portion that I saw, that I knew everything on earth as it is in heaven. For everything in the natural, there's a parallel and corresponding occurrence in the supernatural. When God showed me this right here changed the game for me. From that day to this one, I blame God for nothing. People will get angry when like natural disasters happen and when, people just seem like, just random things or we consider random things happen, things that we don't understand. We get angry. We feel like there should be some justice done or whatever. So one day my husband and we had an argument, and this was when we had 3 vehicles, and God was really teaching us a lesson. God was really in the space of using everything, because you got to be mindful when you open yourself up and you ask people, pray this prayer. And a lot of times people just obviously don't know what they're praying, because I really didn't know what I was praying. So I pay attention very carefully to what people are asking for. And most of the times, people are asking for things that they are not willing to receive. They're asking for things without counting the cost. They're asking for things that they have no idea of how much it's going to take to position them. So at one point in my life, everything got to be so bad. Like it felt like everything around me was just falling down. And so I would journal every day, journal, journal, journal. And this one day I had like multiple journals going, journaling for my finances, journaling for my marriage, journaling for my life, journaling for my family. It was just a lot of different journals. And I had gotten so frustrated and I was so angry with God because it seemed like all of my efforts were just falling flat. And I put all of my journals together and I was like, I'm just gonna burn them. I mean, this is ridiculous. I don't see the result. I don't see the purpose of this. This is absolutely insane. So I really have put all of my journals, a lot of journals. It would have been a nice bonfire. So God said, before you get rid of them, before you burn them, and I had it's a big one. It's on the shelf back there, but it's a huge journal. It's about that big. And it's like I call it like my like my Bible, my personal Bible. But that journal contained all of the information, if you will, that pretty much started this process that you see here in this community. So that journal, I was so frustrated and I was like, I wanted to burn my journals. I wanted to do that. And God said, well, before you do that, open up the journal and read it. I was like, I don't want to read this. Like I said, I'm gonna burn them. And God said, well, do that and take a pen out too. Like, since you're not gonna do that step, just do everything that I need you to do. So God had me take out a pen and my journal. And God had me to just circle the words that I had used. God said, why are you so angry with me? This is what you've asked for. Heaven is just following the request that you made. I use words like teach me, mold me, shape me, show me. It was on and on and on. I was like, oh, my fault. When you put yourself in a position for heaven to really demonstrate the power of heaven, you've got to be strong enough to accept it. See, we want to pray these bold and earth shaking prayers and mountain moving prayers. And do you know, if literally if literally, this is all figurative speaking, but literally, you say that you want the faith to move mountains. Do you know how strong you would have to be in the natural to move an entire freaking mountain? On earth as it is in heaven, for everything in the natural, there's a parallel and corresponding occurrence in the supernatural. People say stuff, I want water walking faith. Do you know how focused you have to be on God? Do you know how focused you have to be on heaven? Do you know how consistently you have to keep your eyes on heaven in order for you to perform things that people have never done? Because there's no model for it. There's no blueprint for it. You can't take your eyes off of God 1 second. But we get angry because we're not willing to do the work to fortify ourselves to fulfill the request that we have made. I was like, oh. So I had to just put my big girl panties on and be like, oh, okay. And one thing I've also learned, and I share this with people, when you invite heaven into a situation and heaven says yes, a yes from heaven is a yes from heaven. And heaven is, this is why so many people get frustrated. I constantly teach, when you ask God for change, when you ask God to do something in your life, do not stop until you start to see signs of life of that thing that you've asked for, because heaven is moving. That's why I constantly tell people, do not start this work if you're not going to finish it. Because once you open up heaven, once you invite heaven in, you have given heaven a license to do what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, how it needs to be done, whenever it needs to be done, with or without you. And when you get to the place where you feel as though you are tired and you do not want to go on, you feel like you're getting raked over the coals, you feel like heaven is beating you up, you feel like all of these things, you're right where you're supposed to be. But see, most people want to tap out, give in, move on in another direction, but fail to realize that heaven is still at work in the very area you have requested. So if you're going to be bold enough to pray for the thing, you're going to be bold enough to ask for what heaven has for you. You're going to be bold enough to cry out and instruct heaven and direct heaven to do these things in your life. You got to be bold enough to continue the process. And if you are not bold enough to continue the process, then you need to be bold enough to ask heaven to exit. Who's bold enough to pray that prayer? See, when I started to pray for a healed marriage, heaven was like, okay, all right, we got a lot of work to do. Because, see, people want to rush heaven through the process, but refuse to acknowledge how long they've been in the process. So I get this question so many times, because when people get heavily involved in the work and they begin to see all of the wonderful things that heaven is doing and the realignment and the reassessment, people get excited, and then they come to me and they ask, well, how long do you think it's going to take for me to turn this situation around? How long do you think it's going to take for this to happen? How long do you think it's going to take for the manifest? How long do you I started to get that question a whole lot. I said, wow, okay, God, what am I supposed to tell people? Because my answer would scare people, because I would tell people that, God started working on me in like 2009 and did not release me to the public until 2015. And people start doing the math and they're like, oh, that's a long time. But what I don't tell people is that actually God started like years before that to do the prep work to get me ready to receive the instruction that I needed. People don't want to hear that. So God was like, don't tell them that story because you ain't gonna have nobody listening to you because ain't nobody gonna want. I said, okay. God said, that's your personal journey. That's your thing. I said, you're right. You're right. So my standard answer, if anyone out here wants to know, give God equal time. Oh, people don't want to hear that. People be like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I was in that thing for like 10 years. You mean it's gonna take God 10 years to get me out of it? Well, we all have to see. God is the creator of time. God is not bound by time. Your radical obedience is what moves heaven and God through the process. So it may take 10 years, it may take 10 weeks, it may take 10 days, it may take 10 minutes. It all depends on how you come to the table. So I used to have a lot of issues with God and how God would approach things and how I felt like God was always leaving me hanging and all of that. But this one particular day, Mike and I had an argument, and we had at the time, God was dealing with us on a lot of different things because I had been praying for change. Literally, we had three cars. And of those three cars, one was a minivan, one was a BMW, and one was a Chevy S10, a two-seater stick. In Grand God style, all of the vehicles broke except the Chevy S10, the stick, which was a two-seater. We are a family of four. And at that time, my son was a chunky little thing. He was big. He was like thick. I was like, oh my God. The kids used to laugh because if we had to all go somewhere, we all had to climb in there. So my daughter would straddle the gear shift, and my son would like sit in my lap, which was, oh my God, he was huge. And then I would sit, and then it was like the kids like, this is like a freaking clown car. This is ridiculous. Like we would park a block away from wherever we were going so people would see us getting out. But God did that on purpose. God did that on purpose. We had a minivan which could more than hold all of us, and we had a BMW. So that was a high performance vehicle. It was like, okay, God, there is a lesson here. But see, when God starts to break you down and God starts to break things down in order to build you back up, this is when we get a little sketchy and we get a little skittish and we get scared and I don't want to do it anymore. And then, but heaven is already on the move. So prior to the Chevy breaking down, the minivan, it was working during the time of this story. So my sister had surgery. And that morning, this particular morning, all of the vehicles were working. So I was getting ready to leave out, and my husband, we were in a very bad space, and so he would take the BMW. I was like, oh, and the minivan needed work. This is why you have to be very mindful of the fact. I know my words have power. That's why I joke a little bit and all of that stuff, but I do not do like coarse, like joking, like killing people and stuff like that and making up like really like outrageous stories and because my words have power and that stuff will be happening. That's the problem. So I was like, oh, I learned that. But anyway, this day was the lesson, one of the days that God used to teach me this lesson. So my husband was leaving out of the house and we got into an argument. I said, oh, so you just gonna leave me with the death trap. That's why I called the minivan because it needed repairs. But it wasn't that bad. But it was, I wanted to ride, I wanted to drive the BMW. So anyway. So he pulled off like bye and he left. And so I'm getting the kids and I had the kids and I'm taking them to school and I was just mad. And so I dropped them off. And so my sister was having surgery that day. So I was actually on my way up to the hospital to be with her because I wasn't going to work that day. So I got to the hospital, and so we were kind of sitting around waiting and everything. So she was in surgery pretty much the majority of the morning. She came out maybe about 2 or 3 ish, and so it was an outpatient type thing. So the doctor said, well, as soon as she comes to and this medication starts wearing off, you're going to want to have her pain meds available. So my brother-in-law said, can you run to the drugstore and pick up the prescription so that we can all get back to the house at about the same time? Because he didn't want to have to stop with her in the car. I said, yeah, sure. So I am driving and I'm on my way home and, to get the prescription filled. And so I'm on, if anyone's familiar with the DMV area, I'm on Route 50 going towards like the Annapolis area. And so I'm driving, and the speed limit, I'm doing like the speed limit or more than the speed limit. And all of a sudden, my tire blows, and these were new tires. So the van needed repair, but the tires were not bad. I'm nervous about riding on bad tires because I've had a bad experience. But anyway, the tire blew. And so I was able to pull off on the side of the road, and I didn't even look at the tire itself. I just knew that the tire went out. So I was like, "Oh man." And so I was in the car, in the van. So I called my husband, and so we were actually beefing at the time. So I was like telling him he needed to come to meet me so that he could help me with the tire. So he was a little salty, and then he's like, "Why don't you just call a tow truck?" I was like, "Cuz you're my husband, like you need to be here to help me." Whatever. It was a long story. So anyway, so he came and the tow truck driver came. So the tow truck driver got there before my husband did. And the tow truck driver um was walking around the van and everything. He was just like shaking his head, like, oh my God, oh my God. And he looked at me, he said, "You okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." And he said, "Have you didn't get out to look?" I said, "No, I didn't get out." I was like, "No," because I was on Route 50. I was like, "I ain't gonna if somebody run off this road and hit me or something." So I was just sitting there. I pulled off as much as I could. And he was like, "You are very lucky." I was like, "What?" I was like, "The tire blew." He says, "No, no, 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 no." He was like, "The way your tire blew." He said, "I've seen incidents like this where if a tire blows like this, the vehicle's gonna flip over. Like you should have flipped over. Like the it should you should have lost control of the vehicle." Like I was like, "What?" So then after he said that, I got nervous. I was like, "Oh my gosh." I was like, "Oh Lord." And I realized like that could have been me. Like that could have been done. So after I did Mike dropped me off. We went to the dropped it off at the garage. And then Mike and I came home, dropped him off, and then I continued on to the CVS because I got the car, and I went to the CVS and got the medicine and then went to my sister's house. So that night, after everything was settled and I was home and I was kind of like reflecting on the day, and I just broke down. I was so mad. I was like, dang, God. I was like, as if life isn't hard enough right now. Now you're trying to just take me out. I mean, this is some fraggle naggle bull. Like, this is crazy. And God was like, and I felt like the confusion that heaven was like directing towards me. Like the angels were like, what is she talking about? I was so mad. And so after I had my little pity party, God was like, you're angry. Why? Cause I mean, you don't see all this stuff I got going on. I mean, the finances, my husband, the kid. Oh gosh, this life sucks. This is ridiculous. Now you trying to take me out, the tire blowing. I gotta pay for the tire. Now. God was like, we spared your life. I was like, what? God was like, all things work together for the good of those who love and serve the Lord. And I was like, yeah. God said, you're not understanding what this means. God said, all things work together for the good of those who love and serve the Lord. Yeah. God said, well, where do you think the things are coming from? I was like, what does that mean? God so simply showed me that heaven literally takes everything that we provide heaven on a daily basis and puts it together like in a big old pot, like if you're making a gumbo or something. And what heaven takes is what you give. And when you give, heaven puts it all together and heaven will mix it up. And based on the ingredients that you give heaven, heaven tries to give you the best version of all of that combined. God said, let's take a look at what you have given us today. You woke up this morning angry because you had so many things to do. You had to take your kids to school. You had to get them ready for school. You're angry with your husband because you feel like he doesn't have to do anything. You're upset. You're angry. You're fussing at your kids out the door. You're pushing them. You're rushing them. You get them to school. You barely say goodbye. You barely say I love you. You drive back home. You throw some clothes on. You're frustrated. You're trying to get to the hospital on time so that you can be there for your sister, but you're trying to do all of these things in between. You get to the hospital. Your mind is racing 10,000 miles a minute. You're not focused on anything really that's going on, but you're trying to be present. Heaven was like, shall I go on? I get it. I get the point. I get it. I get it. God said, all of the things that you've given us in this day up until that point, all we could do with that was just spare your life because you didn't give us the best parts of your day. See, the Bible teaches us that trouble will come. But see, we expect trouble so much that we don't do anything to really circumvent the trouble. We just roll with it. What God began to show me, God was like, if you give heaven better stuff, then the outcome will be better. I was like, oh, that's how this thing works. Okay. So God said, stop being so angry with heaven because heaven is doing the best that it can with what you have given. So tonight is the night that you go into deep reflection and search all of the areas of your life where you have been upset with heaven because you felt that heaven gave you a bad deal. But tonight I challenge you to ask yourself, was heaven just giving you the best out of all of the scenarios that you presented to heaven? Did you give heaven the best, or were you just giving heaven whatever, and heaven is trying to make the best out of whatever you have given? So forgive God tonight. God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I forgive you. I forgive me. I forgive everything that I thought about these situations because I only knew in part. Plead insanity. Plead insanity. Let heaven know that you want to do better, that you desire to do better, and that you need to do better. All right, everybody, y'all have fun with this one. I pray that this was a little food for thought for you, that you were able to garner some wisdom, and that you are going to be able to rise higher. And tomorrow, you can start this right away. Like you can start this tonight. You can start this as soon as you click off this call, this live. Make a promise to yourself to give heaven better stuff. Love you all. Y'all have a good evening, and I will see y'all tomorrow. We got what? 3 more days. 3 more days to go. I'm so proud of y'all. Almost 30 days in. All right. Have a good one. Sweet dreams, and I will see y'all tomorrow.